I've never considered myself a prepper. I've heard of them. I knew what they were, but I'm more of a planner. And since I'm a teacher, most of what I do is lesson plans. In fact, I've often said that I felt like I spent more time planning than actually teaching. Good morning, everybody. This is Deb from Just Do Something Homestead, and today we're going to talk about planning for the future. And as the U.S. continues to spiral out of control, I'm starting to see that my values are more in line with preppers than they are with the typical Americans. Many of my co-Americans are simply putting on the blinders. If you don't see what's going on, then I guess it's not really happening. I'm afraid most Americans are still in the mindset of, well, it didn't affect me. So what can we do? I'll tell you what we can do. We can wake up and stop this nonsense. We have been lied to most of our life, and things are not getting better. It is time to start preparing or planning. Do you honestly think your country is going to swoop in and save you? It's no different than me having to protect my green beans from the rabbits. Without an electric fence, they will come in and take whatever they want. Isn't it funny that I raise food for my own rabbits so that we have fertilizer for our garden? But the wild rabbits are what is eating up our garden. So how do we take back control? It's really quite simple. Whoever controls the food controls the people. So let's take back control. And then, like that electric fence, let's protect what's ours from the enemy. In order to feed your family, you need a source of food in case things get tough. And by tough, I mean prices that are just too expensive for the average family to purchase, or empty shelves where you simply can't find the food you need. And I cannot stress this enough. If you do not have a vacuum sealer, I highly recommend you get on Amazon in the next hour, get one in your cart, and have it delivered in the next few days. By vacuum sealing your foods, even the ones you purchase, you are able to keep the critters out, the insects out, and to extend the best by date of all the food that you seal. Long before all this turmoil started in our country, my goal was to never waste any food. And vacuum sealing is one of the easiest, cheapest ways to accomplish that. If you are new to our channel, I just want to say welcome to Just Do Something Homestead. And we are so excited to have you here. Over the last few months, we have gained a lot of new subscribers, and most of them are asking me for ways to vacuum seal. The beginning of this video was all on the reasons of why you should vacuum seal, but the rest of this video is on how. I like to always start with what equipment you need to vacuum seal. Of the utmost importance is a quality vacuum sealer. This is the Food Saver FM5200. I will put the link embedded into this video. I should have wrote down what year I purchased this Food Saver. It has been at least 12, 13, maybe even 14 years, and it is used heavily. That means sometimes I'm using this every single day of the year. That is a quality food saver. You can buy handheld vacuum sealers. In my experience, they don't have as strong a suction, which means they don't last as long for long-term storage. The reason I like to go with a full-fledged vacuum sealer is you can also do bags as well, so I can vacuum seal meats and freeze them. Whatever sealer you get, make sure it has this port. That is what is going to go on the top of your jars in the attachments. Other items you need are canning jars. These back ones are half-gallon. That is my preference. I usually put most things in half-gallon jars, but you can use quarts, pints, half pints, quarter pints. It doesn't matter if it's a wide mouth or a regular mouth lid. These are the adapters that you need to plug this port into before you put it on the jar. And these were a separate purchase. They were $13.99 for both of these on Amazon. But honestly, some of these new vacuum sealers are including them. The next item is lids or flats. This package is a new one that is regular size, but I also have some wide mouth. You will notice that these are used. That's because with vacuum sealing, you can use these flats over and over again. Sometimes you even have the little marks where I open them, but as long as they still seal, you are good. You're going to want to use the rings that came with your canning jars. Now, I know that is opposite of canning, and a lot of people question me on it, but with vacuum sealing, after your container is sealed, you're going to put the ring on top. And a couple miscellaneous things, you're going to want a Sharpie, and these are all natural cupcake liners, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I find a wide mouth canning funnel to be very helpful when I'm using things that are powdery, like flour, so you don't make a big old mess. Let's get started. The first thing I am going to vacuum seal is flour. And I'll just say I'm able to get this organic flour at Walmart, and it's actually the cheapest place I can find it. I like to wash these jars in hot soapy water the night before and then let them air dry. Moisture is your biggest enemy, so you do not want any jars that have any moisture in them. And the same goes for any product that you're putting into the jar. A lot of people freeze their flour, and that is fine unless you're going to immediately vacuum seal it. That's because once you take it out of your freezer and you put it on your countertop, it has moisture in it from being frozen. So what I would do if you've already froze it is, again, let it sit out at least 1 or 2 days so that it will dry. But what about bugs in my flour? My grandma says you always have to freeze your flour. I know, my grandma said the same thing. The reality with vacuum sealing is it removes the air, and nothing can live without air, and nothing is going to get into that jar. The first step is to fill your jar with your product, in this case, flour. I actually fill it till it's over the rim on my funnel because I want to show you something. Flour is one of those items that when you start shaking it around, you're going to see that it starts to sink down lower and lower. I actually had a subscriber say, "Oh my goodness, don't thump your jar, you're going to break it." Well, in decades of vacuum sealing, I have never, ever broken a jar vacuum sealing, but thanks for the tip. I've lowered it about 4 inches, so I'm going to repeat that process and put in more flour until it's closer to the top, and then shake again. As far as head space, I'm aiming for about 1 inch. And again, it looks like it's way too high. Just start rocking it. I have found that if there's one mistake that people do when they are trying to vacuum seal, they fill their jars to the very top. And with vacuum sealing, it will not seal if the food is too high. So it's better to be a little bit lower. I usually aim for this ring right here, but to be lower is better. I just take my hand at this point and I rub the top of that rim. And again, yes, my hands are clean. I don't know if you thought I was scratching myself or sticking up my nose before I did this, but that is a clean hand. I'm going to put this cupcake liner on top of the flour. This works pretty well for a regular size mouth, but I found the wider ones, you want to flatten it out a little bit. So I'm going to flatten all around it and then set it on top. And the reason we do this with powdery items like flour and sugar, cornstarch and powdered sugar, anything that's light and fluffy, you want a barrier between your product and your vacuum sealer. And look how perfectly that fit in there. I'm going to reuse this lid and you just place it firmly on top. It's just sitting there. Sometimes you want to make sure that it's perfectly in the center. I have actually vacuum sealed it where it was barely on there, just like that. And you had this huge overlap. When that has happened in the past, what I've done is unsealed it and then slid it over. You want it in the center. I'm going to use this wide mouth adapter. The brand is actually Food Saver and they call it their jar sealer. I'm not sure why, because it's not actually the sealer. This is the adapter that goes on top of your lid. So push it on firm. The port gets plugged into this hole on the top and you want to push it down in there because actually when your vacuum sealer is running, it may pull up a lot. So you want to make sure it's in there firm. This is the easy part. You're just going to put on the power and hit accessory. Now when I do that, it's going to be loud, it's noisy. This is my older one, and I found it's a little bit noisier than my new one. This sealer will shut off when the air is removed. So all you're doing is just turning it on and waiting for it to end. It takes maybe 30 seconds. That easy. I'm going to remove the port. Sometimes it's really hard to get it off there. Let's try it. I did it one-handed. And take off the jar sealer, or as I call it, the adapter. To check if it's sealed and if it's sealed firm, what you want to see is this little indent on the top. And the next thing is you want to actually pull on it. And I don't mean just barely pull, I mean pull hard. If you are pulling hard all the way around that lid and it hasn't budged, that jar is sealed. I received a ton of criticism over the Mason jar sealer from China. That is that little black vacuum sealer that is handheld. I kept telling everybody it's not for long-term storage. It's only for a short term, and that's because it's not strong enough. But honestly, nobody wanted to hear it because, hey, it was less than $30. Some people got them for less than $20. And so they're like, works fine for me. What I'm now receiving is message after message after message saying, hey, Deb, you were right. I went back on my shelf and those jars are no longer sealed. Now, I don't want to be right. I want you to buy the best quality machine that will do the job. And I don't want you to spend all this money buying flour and sugar and salt, sealing it only to find it never really sealed and you lost what you thought you had preserved. So again, if you can only buy one item, I highly recommend that you get the Food Saver FM 5200. And let me tell you, there's a new one. I just went on Food Saver that is even fancier because when you take this part out, it's all ready to plug into your jars. It already has everything you need. And I saw that and thought, I might like to get that. But the reality is I'm cheap. I have 2 Food Savers that work wonderfully. I don't need another one. At this point, you want to mark on the lid what you have. So mine is saying organic flour BB. That's best by June 2026. And the next biggest question I get is how long do you know you can store your flour for? First, I look at my package and it says June 2025. So immediately I'm going to add 1 year. That's where I came up with June 2026. But here's the secret information. BB means best by. It does not mean expired. I just think that's a trick made up by, food companies. Oh, your food's expired. You better throw it out. No, no, no. Best by means for optimum quality. You want to use it before the best by date, which was 2025. But I am preserving this by vacuum sealing it. At the bare minimum, I am going to get 1 year beyond that date. In reality, I'm going to get about 10 years, but this tells me just a basis to go by. This is the date that was on the package. Everything else is determined by how you store it. And what I mean by that is you want to store all your vacuum goods in a dark, cool location. Cool as in no higher than 50. You don't want it frozen, but by preventing the sun from hitting it and keeping it cool, you can extend that best by date by years. And if you don't have a pantry or a place off your garage that stays cool, just make sure you put it in a place that's dark and cooler. It might be under a bed in a bedroom. It may be in your basement. Our basement is heated. We discovered real quick that is not the place you want it because our wood stove makes it really hot in there in the winter. Well, there you have it. That is 1 jar already done. And if I hadn't been yapping my head off, it would have been done in about 5 minutes instead of 20. I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same thing and fill another half-gallon jar with flour. That is 5 pounds of flour that fit very nicely into 2 half-gallon canning jars. Next, I'm going to vacuum seal these nuts that Jim absolutely loves. They don't do a thing for me. I try to stick with organic, but he does not. I'm going to use a wide mouth quart jar for this and just fill the jar by hand. It's not like the flour that goes all over the place. The only difference when you do something that is not powdery is you don't need that barrier there that was provided with that cupcake liner. So once I wipe the top, I just put the lid on, and then the rest of it's exactly the same. Even though I put down that they're good until May 2026, I know Jim. He's going to have these eaten in about 2 weeks at the most. I want to show you the dents on this lid. When Jim opens them, he just grabs the can opener and just flips it, and it puts a big dent in it. The reality is it still seals fine. This is the opener that Jim uses. As you can see, it's going to put some damage from the end on there. This is the one that I use, and for some reason, he doesn't care much for this one. But it's going to go on the edge. This one's not sealed, but it goes on the edge, and you just lift it up, and it does not damage your lid. The last thing I'm going to vacuum seal are these packets of crackers. And yes, I could take each of these crackers out, but to be honest, it's easier to do it a different way. All right, my secret tool for pre-packaged foods is a paper punch. I was just to stick these crackers into this jar. You're really accomplishing nothing by vacuum sealing it because you're not removing the air around the crackers. So instead, I'm going to poke 2 or 3 holes on each side of this package. When I vacuum seal it, it's going to suck out the air from this package. Here, I'm not sure if you can see it. I think you can. But I put 3 holes on each side. And if I put it against something dark, you can see that the hole goes through all the layers. Now I can place it in my jar. This box comes with 3 different packs inside, so I'm going to vacuum seal 2 of them for the future and leave 1 of them to be used now. Other than putting the holes on the end of each package, you're just going to vacuum seal like you did all the others. Right before the sealer shut off, you heard this little noise, and that was actually the lid sealing. Crackers are especially vulnerable to critters, insects, and moisture, so vacuum sealing is an excellent way to keep them long term. And there you have it, 3 different ways to vacuum seal common items that you may already have in your pantry to extend the best by date. Times can be a little scary now, but we are taught not to be afraid, but to be prepared. For me, that means that I need to be a planner and to plan what I can do if I'm not able to purchase food. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. Have a blessed day, everybody. Bye-bye.